Gracias por su tiempo y no sé si tengan alguna pregunta.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Yes, it's nice to have this training.
My pleasure. You guys are really improving in speaking English. Congratulations.
Professor, thank you for coming in to talk with the workers.
No problem at all. It's my job.
Well, I appreciate that. We're really trying to improve communication and safety on all of our construction sites.
Yes, boss. We're trying to improve our communication at the sites too. For example, Maria, that's not a nail, it's my thumb.
Well, communication and safety are two really important and related issues in any workplace. I think it's great that you have taken some time to concentrate on them.
I think that talking to the guys in their own language is an important step. It seems to me that the best way to improve safety is to train workers.
I think you're right that safety training is necessary, Mr. Smith. But good safety and communication in the workplace are everybody's responsibility.
Yes, but you have to admit that communication would be much easier if all workers spoke English.
Well, language is not the only problem you're facing. Do you think that safety and communication issues will disappear if all your workers could speak English?
Well, not exactly.
Even if language might be your most obvious obstacle, I wouldn't say it's your only one.
What would you say the main obstacle is then?
Cultural differences.
You mean like the concept of machismo and things like that? I've heard about those culture differences, but I'm not sure how they relate to construction work. I've never exactly understood what machismo means anyway. Is it just like being macho?
Well, things like that are indicators of cultural differences. Machismo can have a range of meanings. For some people, the term has to do with courage and virility. For others, it has to do with aggressiveness and a lack of consideration for women. I will say that the simple fact that there is a word like machismo in the Hispanic language immediately draws attention to the importance of masculinity in Latin American cultures. There's a big difference between gender roles in Latin American countries. Certain things are expected of men and others of women.
So you mean there are more defined roles between men and women?
Well, men dominate a more significant portion of the social structure in Latin America than they do in the United States. There's a larger divide between men and women. We can't make the same generalizations about cultural trends in Latin America.
Isn't there more focus on family in Mexico too?
Again, we cannot make generalizations, but like most Latin American countries, Mexico is a collectivist society. There is a huge emphasis placed on family and community. People take responsibility for one another, and there are stronger group ties than typically seen in the United States, where the emphasis is placed more on individuality.
Like the pioneers, self-reliance, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps?
That's right. Self-reliance is seen as the sign of a strong and driven individual in the United States. But in most of Latin America, strong, successful individuals are those who show loyalty for their friends and families and participate in their communities.
That makes sense. So maybe explaining the importance of things like safety regulations in relation to the workers' friends and families instead of just the workers themselves would help me communicate with them better.
Well, that is a step in the right direction. You should also consider that in most Latin American countries, there is a greater inequality of power and wealth than there is in the United States.
What do you mean by that?
Well, in most Latin American societies, it's accepted that all members are not necessarily holding equal amounts of power or wealth. This way of thinking may be shared by Latinos who are living in the U.S. They might not necessarily feel that they possess equality of power and wealth in society like a lot of us do.
Any other tips for me?
Another thing to consider is that most Latin American countries use very strict rules to minimize uncertainty or avoid the unexpected.
Well, how would knowing that help me communicate with my workers?
A lot of Latinos have been brought up in a society resistant to change and accepting risk. Perhaps explaining that the construction site rules are there for the workers' own safety to minimize risk could help.
You've given me a lot to think about, Professor. I really hope that I can use some of these insights to help me communicate with my workers. Maybe you can help me with some Mexican phrases, Maria.
But, boss, I'm not Mexican.
Oh, sorry, I just assumed.
That because I speak Spanish I'm from Mexico? Patotas is from Mexico, but my family and I immigrated from Colombia.
It's a pretty common mistake, Mr. Smith. A lot of supervisors assume that because their workers speak Spanish, they are from Mexico.
Not just our supervisors, everyone. But there's a big difference between the countries we come from. Different money, different dialects, different landscapes, costumes, food, and more.
Exactly. A lot of people don't realize how different all the countries in Latin America are from each other.
Even the food is different. We don't all eat tacos and burritos. In my village, we make the best food in all of Latin America.
Well, I don't think so. The best fruit is from my hometown, but we can talk about that later. The point is, we are all Latino or Hispanic, but we're not all from Mexico.
Got it. Sorry, guys.
Well, Mr. Smith, I can give you some basic recommendations for developing training materials with regard to cultural differences.
That would be great.
The main recommendation is to design materials that are language and culturally appropriate if you really want more effective communication.
So, like we've been talking about, language is important, but so are cultural differences.
Yes, as far as language, you want to use one that is familiar to the workers, which is obviously Spanish in your case. But not just that. You want to keep the materials very basic. Use standard Spanish and don't assume that all workers have gone to school, while providing translation of certain words when appropriate.
Like if I was talking about very specific construction equipment?
Also, try not to just have a direct translation from materials you already have in English. Use a native Spanish-speaking translator familiar with construction safety techniques, and use lots of pictures in the training materials to clarify your meaning. Graphics can be some of the best teaching tools.
What about during the training session? Do you have any suggestions for that?
Well, the point is to concentrate on your workers and their safety, right?
Right.
That's most important, your commitment to your workers' safety. So I will definitely include information on OSHA regulations and workers' rights to safe and healthy conditions, safe work practices, the right tools and equipment.
Of course.
I will also suggest having Hispanic trainers conduct the session. A native speaker will be able to communicate with the workers better and answer questions in Spanish. I have many native Spanish-speaking trainers in my work team.
That makes sense.
It's also helpful to evaluate your own process. Try a pilot training session with a few workers before you have the main session. And after the session, ask the workers for their feedback. What was helpful? What did they like? What was confusing? What didn't they understand? You can adjust for the next session according to their feedback. It is always good to continue to use feedback to improve the training.
Thanks so much, Professor. I understand much better, and I think I'll be able to do a better job with safety training based on your recommendations.
You're welcome. I know that you will do what you can to improve the communication in your work sites.
Well, actually, I've been taking some Spanish classes recently.
Really?
When, boss?
Yeah? When do you have time for Spanish classes?
Por las noches, por supuesto. Hace 6 semanas que tomo clases y practico también a la hora de la comida. For example, I don't know the words for hard hat and scaffold and things like that yet, but I do know manzana, casa, comida y felicidades.
Impresionante.
Sí, muy bien, jefe.
That's a great step in improving your communication with your workers, Mr. Smith. Your commitment to developing a linguistically and culturally sensitive training session is a great start to improving construction safety. Good luck and buena suerte.